on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Very good show tonight. Glad you're with us. Hope you'll call in with your question or comment. We're talking about our juvenile justice system. Once again, of course, we've been doing a series of reports broken the entire month of November. I had a story on last night. Phil Williams has had stories on. Jennifer Krause has had stories on. We've really been focusing on our juvenile justice system. Tonight we have somebody on the front lines here in Davidson County who, again, can answer your questions, talk with you about this. Happy to have with us Kathy Sinback. She's the Juvenile Court Administrator here in Davidson County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being in many of the stories that we've done. We appreciate it. So I'm going to talk to you about the stories in a moment, but big picture. There's been, obviously the reason we're doing these stories, there's been a lot of concern, frustration with juvenile crime in Davidson County. What is, from your viewpoint, what are your concerns? What have you been seeing?
Well, first I want to say thank you for bringing these issues to the public. I think it's a conversation our community needs to be having, and the work that you all have done here at Channel 5 has been extraordinary in bringing these issues to light. And so I think one of my major concerns has been just the misunderstanding that the public has about juvenile justice and about our kids, the youth that come through our system, and understanding just sort of the big picture of what we deal with at Juvenile Court, which I think you all have really shown a lot of the kind of inside of our system. But we have these lingering problems that you see on the nightly news with serious crimes, with carjackings and very violent crimes committed by juveniles. But when you look at the overall picture of juvenile crime, it doesn't bear out that there's an increase overall, which has been a very interesting thing because people have a perception that there's an overall increase in crime. But we pulled, as part of our research into this story, we pulled the most recent data from the police department on arrest rates, juvenile arrest rates, and that's straight from the police. And from 2013 to the present, and Judge Calloway took over in 2014, so we're looking at that period of time and the work that we're doing. The arrest numbers have gone down every year since 2013. They've been lower than 2013, and this year they reached an all-time low point of down 49%, and that's the arrests for the real crimes. So not if you take out the truancy and the curfew violations. So you see crime arrests going steadily down, even though the police attention to juvenile crime has gone up, and they now are wonderfully focused on crime.
So why do you think we have the misunderstanding? Because that's one reason I think we're doing these series of reports. People are concerned and they feel like it's worse than ever.
Absolutely. And so one of the things we found out is certain types of crimes have been going up. And I think Mr. Williams in his stories has talked about this. There's two specific crimes that are a real problem and an increasing problem, which is guns and car thefts. And vehicle thefts committed by juveniles with low impulse control can often lead to very dangerous chases and other types of crimes, especially when there's guns. They find guns in the cars, or they somehow get their hands on guns. That's just a terrible situation. But other types of crimes have gone down. So residential burglaries have gone down since 2013 by about 75%. Aggravated assaults have gone down dramatically. Other types of serious felonies have gone down, but these other types of crimes that are very frightening to us as a community have gone up. And so even though our juvenile crime rate is down, we still feel concerned about it, as we should. We need to be aware, and we need to do the things that will make it continue to go down, and especially go down in those areas of concern, such as handgun possession and the vehicle thefts.
Vehicle thefts are a big one, and we do seem to see that a lot. And I've seen Phil Williams' stories on that. Are you hoping that we can have some changes and some adjustments? I mean, how do we address the fact that we're seeing more of these vehicle thefts? What do we need to be doing? Because there's some that are frustrated that there's this revolving door, that there's not enough punishment associated with that. Do we need to be changing some things when it comes to vehicle theft specifically?
Well, I think when you talk about the revolving door, as Phil has pointed out, the law in Tennessee does not allow us to detain youth on property crimes, and vehicle theft is treated as a property crime in the state of Tennessee. And we could change that law, of course. There could be more detention, but I would ask that people not just kind of jump to that as a solution, because that also, just detaining kids for indefinite periods of time, also isn't effective. The research shows that having several weeks of detention actually doesn't change the child's behavior. What kids really need is long-term treatment and rehabilitation services, and also incarceration is very expensive. I looked at how much does it cost to keep a kid in detention in Nashville for 30 days? It's $9,000 per child. So when you think about, how are we using our money, how are we using our resources, and what are the smartest ways to use those resources, I think what we really see is that we need to get interventions in quickly for these children. As has been pointed out, we need to make sure we're getting them in court quickly, we need to be resolving these cases quickly, but then also we need to be working as a community to intervene with these youth. When they're on probation, we need everyone rowing in the same direction. So we have our probation officers are amazing. They're going out with these kids, trying to keep them in the community. So they're on call 24 hours a day. They're going out to their homes. They're searching their rooms to make sure they don't have guns or other dangerous items. They are going to school IEP meetings, and they're going to disciplinary meetings to make sure the kids are getting the right educational services and that they're not getting expelled when there's some other way, because we know that expulsion leads to increased delinquency. They are providing hooking up mental health services for the family, providing other kinds of mentorship and resources. But what we need is for everyone to sort of see that this is the way to go, because this is what is actually successful. Our probation success rates have been very high. We have, I think 80% of our people who finish probation don't have an additional felony within 2 years. And so, if they finish and they complete our probation, they're very successful. The problem that we see is when kids can't be successful in the community, they have to go into the Department of Children's Services custody. So if they are not successful on our probation, that's when a lot of things, kind of seem to fall apart. And those kids, we see them coming back into our system. They come back with new arrests, and a lot of times we haven't seen a real change.
We can talk about that, what happens when they go into DCS custody, but I bet we'll get calls, and I want to have you just answer this off the top. They'll say we need to be tougher, and that gets an applause or whatever. I mean, that problem solved. We need to be tougher, problem solved. And we've done that with adult crime, but what do you say when people say we just have to be tougher on juvenile crime? What about that?
So to be tough on juvenile crime, if you were to do it the same way we do with adult crime, where you have prisons that are not set up to be real rehabilitation facilities and just a long time of incarceration without services, that's not going to work for kids. Kids their brains are developing. They have not, the brain doesn't fully develop, especially in the prefrontal cortex, which is where our decision making happens, till age 25, and we know that youth do not respond to the slap on the wrist mentality. So you can try to get their attention, you can lock them up, but unfortunately many of our youth have been through so much trauma that just being tough on them actually can have the opposite effect. And so what we have to do is we have to find out what is true accountability, and holding those kids responsible for their actions, but also doing it in a way that is going to actually change their behavior. Sometimes communities will think it's tough on juveniles to transfer them to the adult system. We've seen some other counties who have said, we're going to be tough on these Nashville kids who come come to our communities and commit crimes. And so they will actually transfer them to the adult system, but they'll give them a low bond, or they will actually waive their transfer hearing in exchange for releasing them on their own recognizance, saying they're being tough on crime by transferring them to the adult system. But then those youth are right back here in our community, and what's happened then? They're 15 years old. We have this situation right now, a 15-year-old who's been transferred out of another county to the adult system, makes bond, or actually is placed on adult court probation, which is just where you go report. It's not like our probation officers where they're going out to your house and going to your school. So he's on adult court probation at age 15, and he's comes back to Nashville with very little supervision, commits new crimes, and now he's in the adult system in Nashville as well. And that's not tough on crime. Putting a kid on adult court probation at age 15 or letting them out on bond is not tough on crime. When we transfer youth, which we transferred I think about 17 youth last year, very serious offenses to the adult system, when we transfer them with a very high bond. And generally they don't get out. They end up serving their adult sentences, usually in prison. And so a lot of times what people think is tough on crime is not really effective.
The mentality would be that basically you're giving up on them, that they are they are equal to these mistakes that they have made, and it's easy to be mad at them, and it's easy to be frustrated. But you're saying it's different than adults, and we should not give up on them. Do you think the community is ready to hear that? Do you see us moving in that direction or moving away from that direction?
Well, I have been so heartened by the series that you all have been doing with Broken, because I think it is opening people's eyes to not just see them as young criminals, but to really see them as children. And I know people say that they're not children, they're criminals. If they're gonna steal my car, they're not children anymore. But they are, physiologically, psychologically, in their brains, they're children, and children can be molded. Children can be rehabilitated. Their brains are still forming. We know this. Anyone who's ever had a teenager or been a teenager knows that teenagers make very bad decisions. My 11-year-old daughter told me today, I think sometimes she goes to MNPS public school and sees a lot of things, a lot of kids who are in these types of situations, and she said, I think sometimes kids commit crimes because they don't feel good about themselves. And that is so true. I mean, if you look at a teenager or a preteen and you see the insecurity, and I don't feel like I belong, I don't feel like I'm important, and then you combine that with poverty, with lack of opportunity, with being expelled from school, and you see what opportunities are available to these kids, it actually makes sense that they might do something like steal a car. And if we just write them off, not only are we not helping to make our community safer by helping to rehabilitate this child, but we're buying ourselves a $50,000 a year problem for the rest of that child's life. If we don't do something that's actually research-based and effective, then we can just kind of give up and expect that they're going to be incarcerated in the revolving door for the rest of their lives.
And so then this becomes a discussion about poverty and race and some tough things. It becomes a difficult conversation in our city. And what do you think? Are we up to it? And how difficult is that conversation? And we need to have it more. Do you think that's true? What about that?
I think it's absolutely true that we need to have those tough conversations. When we look at the work that we've done with the Passage Initiative, with trying to address disproportionality in suspensions and expulsions from school, which lines up with delinquency, we have failed to really make any sort of improvement on disparity. We've actually reduced suspensions and expulsions, but the disparity between African American kids and white kids has increased. And so when we look at the children that are ending up in the juvenile justice system, it is overwhelmingly African American and Hispanic, but primarily African American, and it's disproportionate, and it's very aligned with what we're seeing in our school system. And we know from all of the research that the things that change a child's behavior are education, opportunities, and supportive relationships with adults. And so if we are not trying to address those things, then we are not going to move the ball.
All right, we have several calls. Carolyn, Edward, Reverend Fuzz. I encourage you all to hold on the line. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and just start taking calls. So the lines are open. If you want to call in, some lines are open. There they are. The number is 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break, and then start taking calls right after this.